All right. This is a good day. It's a fall day, and I get excited about fall. And we were driving down the road today, and of course it's raining a little bit. There's leaves on the road and leaves in the yard, and Christy got pumpkins out and scarecrows and things in front of the house, and it's like my favorite time of year. I killed a deer yesterday. That felt good. I'm not gonna lie. It was yeah. All those things come together. If you remember a Peter or something like that, I apologize for even sharing that, but it is what it is. All right. If you got your Bible this morning, turn to the book of 1 Peter chapter 4. 1 Peter chapter 4. Title of the sermon this morning is Finding Joy in Tough Times. Pretty cut and dry. Finding joy in tough times. So, in 1985, there were two fast food restaurant managers shot and killed in robberies a few months apart in Alabama. And as small town investigations go, back in that time anyway, they had one witness that identified someone through a photo lineup, and they didn't really have any physical evidence or anything like that. The forensics and the ballistics on things that they did weren't necessarily up to the level that they are now, so the accuracy could have been questionable. But the person that was identified through that photo lineup was a man named Anthony Ray Hinton. And he was arrested and then convicted for both murders and sentenced to death. Mr. Hinton worked at a supermarket warehouse that was several miles away from where the robberies took place, and he claimed to have been at work. And his boss said that he was at work. But the prosecuting attorney, his own attorney, and some other folks said, you black folks always stick together. We don't believe you. So they didn't really take the testimony of Mr. Hinton and his boss to heart, because they were black, and they said that they stick together no matter what. And he had a court-appointed attorney that didn't seem to put a whole lot of effort into things and didn't seem to even really like Mr. Hinton that much. And so therefore the person that he hired to do the ballistic tests and everything to disprove the claims of the prosecuting attorneys really wasn't even trained in that. He was an engineer that had a bad eye and said that he couldn't really see the microscope that good anyway. So everything was stacked against Mr. Hinton for the most part. But here's the interesting thing. When his guilty verdict was announced by the jury, Mr. Hinton said in court that he forgave those who lied on him, lied about him, and that he still has joy despite the injustice that was taking place in his life. His quote was, "After my death, I am going to heaven. Where are you going?" He said that in open court. And I praise God for the fact that people have that faith and they know that their joy lies in God and not in anything else, and that in these deepest and darkest times in somebody's life, they can say, no matter what I go through, I still have joy, and you can't take that away from me. In 2014, a young attorney named Brian Stevenson came along. He was a part of a group that advocated for people on death row. And he read that case and decided to take that case to appeal. Now, Mr. Hinton had already appealed this case in the past, and it got squashed, if you will. But the difference was he was trying to do it on his own, and he also there was another attorney that tried to help him once before, but they were unsuccessful. Well, Mr. Stevenson took this case as I guess almost as a personal type thing, and he really poured himself into it, and he did his research, and he did his digging, and as the old saying goes, the squeaky hinge gets the oil. He wouldn't leave it alone, and he kept filing the paperwork, and he kept digging deeper, and he kept asking questions, and he was asking the right questions, and then he had everything reopened, resubmitted the evidence, had new tests done to show that the ballistics of the casings found at the scene did not match the ballistics of the gun, which belonged to Mr. Hinton's mother, actually. And so all that came together. And finally, the courts realized that Mr. Hinton was innocent after all this accusation. So, after going through all of this for a little more than a year after they filed their petitions and everything for appeal, Mr. Hinton's conviction was overturned, and he was released from prison on April the 3rd, 2015. He sat on death row for 30 years as an innocent man. While he was on death row, he led devotions to the guys in the cells around him. And he wrote a book, and in that book he said that while he was there, he had tea with Queen Elizabeth, he married Halle Berry, and he was a successful something or other, I can't remember. Obviously all this in his mind. But he said that he learned how to defeat his cell through time with the Lord and through the Lord allowing him to escape reality and to find things to bring a little bit of happiness to him. So he wrote a book, became an activist for prison reform, and in 2019, a group got together and decided to make this movie that would portray Mr. Hinton's life and injustice going through this. The movie is titled Just Mercy, and it's a good movie. It's not a Christian movie, so don't vote me out for that. But it's a good movie. It stars Jamie Foxx and Michael B. Jordan, and the names are different. And of course, it's Hollywood, so some of the plot has changed and things like that. But it's still reflective of what he went through. But here's the thing: is knowing what Mr. Hinton went through and reading about how he approached it. I mean, the very moment that he was found guilty by a jury of his peers and sentenced to death, the very moment that happened, he didn't erupt in anger. He didn't just fall apart and collapse. He said, "It's okay because I still have my joy in the Lord." That joy you can't take away from him. And he said, "And it's okay because when I die, I'm going to heaven. Where are you going?" That's pretty awesome. So I was really encouraged by that. And I'm going to be honest with you, it's completely made me step back and reevaluate where my joy is found. It's made me think about that. Because I try to encourage people to find their joy in the Lord, and I try to find my joy in the Lord, but then I find myself being disappointed over stupid things. Things that I put joy or invest joy into, if you will, and expect some other return other than what I get. And I don't like it. Just to be honest with you, I'm human. When I don't get that return on my investment, I'm disappointed. So 1 Peter chapter 4 is where we are. We'll read 2 verses, 12 and 13. And this morning I'm going to read from the ESV. So if you don't have that app or that Bible or whatever, it's okay. I don't either. I got the app. 1 Peter chapter 4, Verses 12 and 13 is what we'll read. Found your place, say God is good?
God is good.
All the time.
All the time.
God is good.
Amen.
Amen. Ain't that cute, some people say. All right, 1 Peter chapter 4, 12 and 13. Beloved, do not be surprised at the fiery trial when it comes upon you to test you, as though something strange were happening to you. But rejoice insofar as you share Christ's sufferings, that you may also rejoice and be glad when his glory is revealed. Rejoice. Joy, rejoice. It's all together, okay? So I find a lot of power in verses that refer to joy in the Bible, and we'll talk about why later, but that's just, I really like it for a lot of different reasons. You can read in the Bible and you will see that most everything that looks like there is certain doom, okay? Most everything that looks like that it is not going to in any way, shape, or form work out in a way that favors God's people or honors God, most all of that ends up doing just that. Favoring God's people and honoring God when they are faithful. When they are faithful. I would say that Mr. Hinton was faithful. I would say that he realized where his joy came from, and I also would say that he realized that no matter what happened to him on this earth, that he had a guarantee of eternity somewhere that people who didn't have the same hope and salvation that he had don't understand. Because you can look at that as that man sat there and that verdict was read, that his life was now going to be ended because of a crime that he did not commit, and he said, it's okay, you can't take my joy. You can't take my heaven because I'm going. I'd also say it's a safe assumption that we all have something that we find joy in. Whether it be your dogs, Mr. Bridgman, I know that brings you a great deal of joy, or whether it be basketball, or whether it be your kids or your grandkids or your job or your hobbies, whatever it may be, we all have something we find joy in. I love spending time with family. I love spending time with God. I find joy in those things. All right. I also love basketball. I also love hunting. I also love fishing and golf and reading and music, all these things. I like to find a little bit of joy in those things, but you got to understand where that joy comes from to begin with. The problem we run into is when we invest all our joy in an activity or a hobby, or especially when we invest all of our joy in a human being. Now you might think, well, you know, I find joy in people and things like that. It's okay. I'm not saying that you shouldn't enjoy people. I'm saying you don't invest your joy in them, right? Our illustration today with Mr. Hinton or whatever, in that we're able to see that a man that had just been wrongfully convicted of a crime and sentenced to death still had joy. He could have just been absolutely devastated at that moment, but he was not. Because he had his joy invested in the one that gives true joy, not in a tangible thing that can break or be taken away or whatever. So how many times have we been let down by something in this world that we sometimes invest joy in? You think about it. Most likely it's too many times for us to rehash or to remember exactly how many. I mean, we could sit here for hours probably and try to think of them. We could probably make a pretty significant list, right? I love my wife more than I have words to explain. I mean, she was like, I can't imagine my life with not having her in it. I just can't. She's like my everything here. But I know that I can disappoint her, and I know that she can disappoint me. And she brings me a great deal of happiness, but I would be foolish to invest my joy in her only. Because even though I regard her as high as I do, she's still human. Now, for the record, I can assure you that I have disappointed her far more than she's ever disappointed me. Okay, I'll go ahead and own that one. Okay, but I'm just telling you, I know that I love my son, I love our daughter, I love you guys, but I know that everybody here is capable of disappointing me just like I'm capable of disappointing you. I don't want to invest my joy in a relationship with someone knowing that if that is all my joy is invested in, if something happens, that relationship crumbles, then I will crumble also. I have never been able to understand why it is that someone would go take their own life because of a relationship. Now, I don't walk in those shoes, and I'm not condemning anybody for anything. Okay, I'm saying because of a relationship. People fight different demons that we don't know, and I don't judge anybody for anything along those lines. I'm just saying I've never been able to understand it because I've always said, well, I mean, for one thing, with the worldly view of that, well, there's thousands of other fish in the sea. Now, I don't want to go looking for other fish, right? I think I got the best little goldfish there is, but but I don't want to go look for another one. But the thing is that as much as I love her, okay, she could kick me to the curb today. I like myself enough that I'm not going to go and hurt myself, but my thing is my joy, I hope, and I can't say this with 100% certainty because I haven't been tested to that point in the same ways as Mr. Hinton has and some other have, but I feel like and I hope that my joy is invested enough in the Lord that I will recover. Now, I'm probably going to harass her to death if she ever does that. I'm going to be around. I'm going to be, she probably charged me with stalking, but nonetheless, I want us to understand that no matter how much we love our spouse or our kids or our grandkids or our parents or whomever, okay, we can't invest our joy in that the way that we do the Lord because we will be let down at some point if we do that. Now, not only do I invest joy or happiness in her, okay, I have hobbies and things that I love, okay? It's deer hunting. I love it. Yesterday, my investment was good, okay? It was good investment yesterday. The Lord blessed me with being able to put meat in our freezer. That was good. But I can't count how many times I've been disappointed in hunting. I can't tell you how many times I can't tell you how many arrows I've shot that hit something other than the deer. I can't tell you how many times I've squeezed the trigger on a rifle just knowing that I had everything aligned perfectly. And there was no way, because I can shoot, and there was no way that I was not going to go and recover that deer and realize that I didn't even find a speck of blood. I just clean missed it. And I was disappointed, right? And also the times that I go and I've got this place scouted out and all the sign is there and it's a perfect day and I know it's going to be a great day of hunting and I go and I see nothing except for that one squirrel that bounces around constantly, makes you think, oh, there's a deer. And then you realize it's a squirrel. That's it. There are so many things in the world that we invest our joy in and none of them are guaranteed to reciprocate that investment. None of them. And so therefore we get let down and so many people feel like that the world is just against them because they don't know where joy truly comes from. It's not only lost people that feel this way. I know saved people that do not understand that the joy in life and the joy that we can experience in life all comes from God. All good and perfect gifts come from where? From the Lord. Come from heaven. I can remember the ups and downs of playing sports as a young person. I mean, I loved playing sports. And I played them all that we had around here. We didn't have hockey. I really wish I wanted to play hockey when I was younger. I was a mean kid. I wanted to hit people. But anyway, but I played football, and I played basketball, and I played baseball, and I ran track, and I even tried to play tennis a couple of times. Not like competitively, but like we just went and played, and it was fun. And if it had to, if dodgeball, if it was kickball, if it was wiffle ball in the street, I didn't care what it was. If it was a sport, I wanted my hands on it. I loved it. And I, like many other athletes, invested my joy into a shaky market, so to speak. Okay, it was like taking your money and investing it right now. I wouldn't. Okay, I'm just going to throw that out there to you. I wouldn't do a whole lot of investing right now. If you've looked at the market, it's shaky at best. Okay, that's what I did though, is I invested my joy into the sport that I was playing, or into whatever it may be. I looked for that joy in the sports based off of my team's performance or my personal performance. I mean, I rode a roller coaster of being on top of the winning scale to being at the bottom of the losing scale. I rode that roller coaster. And if you played sports, I'm sure you understand what I'm talking about. There were many times things didn't go the way I saw them going, and I would be totally deflated and let down. And I'll never forget, I was really fortunate in this, but I was a part of one of the greatest basketball games ever played between Tennessee High and Virginia High. And it was a double overtime game, and we ended up winning on a last-second, three-quarter court shot that was amazing. It really was. Nonetheless, while I was super excited about that, and while I was celebrating with everybody on the court, because people just rushed the court, it was the coolest thing. But I can remember afterwards, I had gone down and I took my shower, and I was the last person in the locker room. I don't know where everybody ran off to or whatever, but I was the last person in the locker room. And I remember two things in that game that had me very, very upset. One, I stole the ball up by the three-point line, and I went down court, and I was going to tear the rim off of the backboard, okay? I mean, I had dunked before. It was really no big deal, except I really wanted an exclamation point on this one because we were playing Tennessee High. And I just really wanted, and it was a tight game, and I knew that this would be a momentum shifter, and I jumped, and man, I brought that ball way back here, and I was going to dunk it as hard as I could, and I threw that bad boy right off the back of the rim, and it went up and almost hit the rafters. I did manage to get the rebound and get fouls. The only reason my coach probably didn't execute me right there. But nonetheless, I did that in front of a packed out, sold out Virginia High crowd, and Tennessee High crowd too, I guess. It was like 3,500, 4,000 people in there, and I just missed a wide open dunk. And I felt about that big. And then, and Bryson's heard this story, because I actually have a picture of this on my phone. In overtime, all right, their big guy, his name was Joey Malone. Joey's a great guy. We were all friends and everything off the court, and we didn't like each other on the court. Joey was a tremendous basketball player, but he got the ball. Somebody threw him a pass, and he was going up for a two-hand dunk, and I came across the lane, and I went up, and I had my hand on the ball, and he didn't make the dunk, whatever, and they called a foul on me. And I still, this day, I have a frozen still shot of that on my phone. And next time I run into Joey, I'm holding it up and I'm going to be like, that was not a foul. All right? But nonetheless, that's all I could think about. Never mind the joy of winning the game. So I had invested in the joy of my team's victory, but I also had invested in my own abilities and my own doings, and I sat there and was disappointed because I was let down. I was let down by the fact that it didn't work out the way that I wanted it to. I was almost like convinced that I wasn't pulling my weight, if you will, right? The problem is I thought that the joy of everything was wrapped up in my abilities or wrapped up in a win. And that's just one example. There are many times that I played games that it didn't go the way I saw it going. But then there would be that next game where I would play and I would be okay. So I was on that roller coaster. But all of my joy and happiness in the game was invested in that. I wish I could tell you that I figured all that out when I was still competing and all that, and that everything was hunky-dory and all that, but it wasn't. I never did figure that out until I got much older, and my days of competing were over. Now I see the joy in everything I do needs to be wrapped up in the Lord. And I still sometimes mess that up. But while I'm making safe bets, okay, because I know that I need to wrap it up. I know that I'm going to fail sometimes. But another safe bet is this. I'm also going to bet that many of us have been through some difficulties that we thought were sure, absolutely sure, to have no good ending whatsoever. I know what some of you have been through. But I'd say it's a safe bet to say that we've all been down that road at one time or another. Well, the good news is that while we feel like that in the middle of that storm or in the middle of that disappointment and that thing that we thought we could find joy in and it's not there, and things just feel like they'll never turn around, you can turn to Psalm 35 and read that, what? Weeping may endure for a night, but joy will come in the morning. Now that don't take that literally, okay? That doesn't mean literally that just because you're having a bad day tomorrow, there's going to be a good day, today, there's going to be a good day tomorrow. What that means is that while things seem like there is no light at the end of the tunnel, and while things seem like that you are absolutely getting beat down right now, that there will be joy to come as long as if you're seeking that joy in the right place. How many times have we been in that place where it just seemed like misery and sadness was all we had? I can't tell you how many times I've had people tell me that they just couldn't see how anything good would come out of this situation, that circumstance, whatever it is. The problem is we get focused on the circumstance instead of the Creator. See, you think, well, the creator of the circumstance? I'm talking about the creator of the universe, the creator of everything, the one that gives us a reason to have joy in our lives. Our focus needs to be there. We don't spend enough time focusing on God and the things that He's already done for us and the things that He will do for us. We tend to focus on just how bad that situation is and the fact that we don't see anything good coming out of it. I know some situations are terrible and hard to go through. Divorce, diagnosis, death, disappointment, false accusations, poor decisions, humiliation, addictions. None of these problems, though, as bad as they sound, are bigger than our God. And when we invest in the fact that our God has already given the greatest sacrifice, the greatest gift that anybody could ever receive, and we know that He loves us. We know that He knew us before we were even formed in the womb. He knew our name. He had a calling for us. Every one of us sitting here right now has a calling on our life. Every single one of us. Some of us have found that calling. Some of us have not yet. But you all have a calling. I have a calling. Some of us are called to preach, some to teach, some to sing, some to do whatever, change light bulbs, some to just witness to somebody in the line at McDonald's. Whatever it may be, you have a calling on your life. That same God that has created all of that and knew us before we were in our mother's womb is the same God that wants to provide joy for you at the end of that circumstance that seems like is hopeless. The Bible uses the word joy in one tense or another over 200 times. I know y'all have heard me say that before, right? But that's a fact. Over 200 times, one tense or another, the word joy shows up in the Bible. So I am thoroughly convinced that God intends for us to have joy. We just got to understand where the source of that joy should be. The part we overlook is that every time the Bible mentions joy, it is totally centered around God. That's the part that we don't understand, or that we tend to push to the side. And it's the most significant point there is about joy. The point to all that is stop investing your joy in something that can fail you and start investing your joy in something that will not, cannot, never has, never will fail. If we can learn how to make a full investment of joy in God and our relationship with Him and His promises, then we can find that joy in any situation we're going through. It's not easy. It doesn't mean that we'll never have another disappointment. It doesn't mean that we'll never have another hurt, okay? We're going to deal with suffering because that was the gift that Adam and Eve decided to give to us, okay? And we're still dealing with it now. It's the gift that keeps on giving all year long, Clark, okay? If y'all don't know that reference, it's probably better that you don't know it, but anyway. However, it does mean that we can be assured that no matter what we go through, joy shall come in the morning. Guys, listen, stop setting yourself up for disappointment. Stop thinking that your joy comes from something here that's tangible. Stop thinking that your joy comes from your bank account. Stop thinking that your joy comes from a bottle. Stop thinking that your joy comes from a behind doors experience that you don't want anybody else to know about. Stop thinking that your joy comes from your kids. Stop thinking that your joy comes from your husband or wife. Stop thinking that your joy comes from your church. Your joy comes from your Creator. That's where it comes from. And that's where you need to invest it. That's where you need to understand. He's never let you down. And He's never going to let you down. It's joy unspeakable. Joy unspeakable. There's no words to describe the joy that comes from God. None. There's plenty of words we can come up with to describe the disappointment that we face when we put our joy in other things. And we put our trust and joy in other things. But when we invest in our relationship with Jesus Christ, then we can sit on the defense stand and say, you can't take my joy even though you're sentencing me to death. I'm not trying to lift up Mr. Hinton or anything like that, but I appreciate where he found his joy. And I hope that we can get to that point too. Bow your head and close your eyes.